Hello students, I'm Shaila Goel, your psychology teacher. You have already studied about the psychological issues, that is disorders. You must be curious about how to treat the people who are having these disorders because they are not cut and clear. So students, in this chapter we are going to understand about the treatment that is known as psychotherapy. In this psychotherapy, we will understand about the various therapies which are used by the professionals to help the individual suffering from psychological disorders. What is psychotherapy? Psychotherapy is a voluntary relationship in which one is seeking the treatment and the other is the one who is giving the treatment. Now, what do you understand by this? This means that it consists of two people, one seeking help and one giving the help. Now, what is the purpose? The purpose is simply to help the client. Now, what do we want to help? We want him to solve the psychological problems that are being faced by her or him. See, everything is revolving around the problem. As soon as the problems are solved, many things will be in clarity and the person will be able to do the things properly. He will be able to live his life properly. So, the whole purpose is to solve the psychological problems so that the person is comfortable. Understood, students? Now, this is a psychological setup where there is a person who is seeking help and the other is giving the help. Now, what is the aim? Aim is to change the maladaptive behavior. Now, the behavior which is not suitable, the behavior which we are not able to adjust, due to which we are not able to adjust in the environment, we have to change that. Okay. Now, we have to decrease the sense of personal stress. The person who is suffering from psychological disorder is in a great stress and we have to reduce that stress. Okay. Next is helping the client to adapt better to the environment. So, students, it is very clear the person who has psychological issues is not able to adjust in the environment, and the whole purpose of therapy is to change the behavior in such a manner that a person is able to adjust in the environment and he is little bit comfortable. So, to make him comfortable, we have to reduce the stress also. Okay, students. Now we have to understand what are the characteristics of the therapeutic approaches. To understand that, this means that it is a all these all are in every therapy, whichever therapy we are talking about. See, it is a systematic application of some theory or principle. Everyone is going to be trained professional. Nobody is going to go to the untrained person because untrained person can cause you more harm than anything else. So we have to go to the therapist who is trained, and then it has to be professional advice. It has to be use of some theory or underlying principles, because we don't want advice. We can get advice at home, but we need a professional help which needs theories, which needs different principles. Persons who have received practical training under expert supervision can practice psychotherapy, and not everybody. See, what I have told you, that the untrained person can cause harm. It is very, very dangerous to go to the untrained therapist. Next is that the therapeutic situation involves a therapist and a person who is seeking help. Now, students, our focus is always on the emotional problems. We have to solve the emotional problems of the client. When we are able to solve the emotional problems, then the person will be able to live properly. So this situation involves therapist and a client. This interaction is confidential, it is interpersonal, it is dynamic. What do you mean by dynamic relationship? It is ever changing. Sometimes the client can be very aggressive, sometimes he can be meek, sometimes the therapist has to act like a dictator, sometimes facilitator. In different therapies, the client and the therapist are having different relationships. Okay, so it is always changing. The situation changes, the understanding changes, as well as the relationship changes. It is interpersonal, it is between the two people, so it is interpersonal. It is confidential, that means that the therapist cannot disclose the things that he has understood in the course of therapy to others. Okay, he has to keep the confidentiality, and due to this confidentiality only, he can build the trust of an individual in him. This human relationship is central to any sort of psychological therapy and is a vehicle of change. Now, this relationship, that this alliance that has been made between a client and the therapist, is a vehicle to the success. See, students, we will only go along with the therapist if we trust the person that he will be very confidential, he will not leak our things, and we can have a good relationship with him. Then only we will trust him, then only we will talk to him, and then only we will listen to him. Now, goals of psychotherapies. All psychotherapies aim at a few or all the following goals. Now we have few goals that we keep in mind. Okay, first is in reinforcing client's resolve for betterment. Now we want the client should be confident that I want to get better. If he is coming to the therapist with a free will and with a confidence that I can change and I can live with a better life, then only the things will be more effective. And if he doesn't come with this attitude, then the therapist has to cultivate first of all this kind of an attitude. Yes, I will become better and I will become much more positive. Next is reduce personal distress or emotional pressure. So students, it is very clear, the person who is not feeling any distress will not come to any therapist. Only in case of high level of distress only he will go to the therapist and seek help. So first of all, to maintain that person in a positive attitude, to help him to live a better life, we have to reduce this emotional pressure by any means. Next is choice is everything. Now the person should understand this, that you have the choices, the choice to change the habits, choice to change the behavior. Okay, the choice is always with the client only. We can guide that person, but who is going to modify the habits? The client. He has to understand that the habits which are not good for him should be changed. Next is change the thinking pattern. Now, because of the thought processes, the person is in dilemma, the person is in distress. So first of all, we have to change the thinking process, thinking pattern of the client, so that the person can change his outlook, the person can change his habit. Next is becoming aware of life's choices. Okay, so students, sometimes we feel very bleak that I don't have any choice, I'm not able to do this because there is nothing for me in it. So we have to give alternatives. We have to show the person that these are your choices, you can go do this or that, or go beyond this also. So we have to inculcate that kind of a confidence in that person, so that he can see the choices which are in front of him. Okay students, next is becoming aware of one's choices in life. Now if we become aware of our choices, we will be able to understand which field we want to go in, what kind of a decision we have to take, because if we know about our choices, then only we can take the decisions in our life. If we are not aware of our choices, we will not be able to take the proper decisions. Next is, the person is distressed because he is not able to have a good relationship with others. So we have to increase the interpersonal relationship, we have to improve on it, and we have to improve the communication between the people. So the main problem is communication. If the communication is not an issue, then the relationship will be smooth. The person has to understand himself to change all of these that we have discussed till now. So awareness is the most important part. The person is, if he is aware about his own strengths and weaknesses, then he will be able to do all the things that we aim for. Okay, so we have to increase self awareness so that the client can understand the positives also and the negatives also, which will help him to uh, improve himself. Okay, now unfolding the potential for positive growth. Now we are breaking the bad habits, we are changing the attitude, we are changing the thinking process. For what? For the personal growth. We have to increase the confidence of an individual also, and in turn, what will happen? He will have the potential for positive growth. The person will know, yes, I can do this. The confidence will increase, the resolution will increase, the person will feel better, and that is why there will be change. Now, relating to one's social environment in more creative and self-aware manner. So, there are workplaces, there are home situations. The person has to be creative and he has to be self-aware also to understand one's own social environment. So, students, our environment affects us, and we have to understand, we have to be little bit sensitive towards our own environment. We can't live in isolation. We live in the environment, in that environment, particular environment only. So, we have to adjust. We have to make changes in our environment so that we can live peacefully. If a person, for example, is living in a village area and he wants to go to a very good international level of school. Now he has to move to the city area, or he has to go up and down daily, okay, to the city to go to that kind of a school. Okay, so the thing is it possible? Can he do that? So he has to be creative, he has to be aware, and he has to adjust with one's environment. Now this pandemic has taught us that we can go for online learning also. So that person who is living in a village can attend a local school and go to the online, go for an online teaching in an international academy. Okay, so there are choices, and we have to adjust in our environment, and we have to embrace it. We can make changes in our environment too, but we have to see the pros and cons. So, the therapeutic relationship, we can say, is a special relationship between the client and the therapist, and it is known as therapeutic relationship or alliance. This alliance is the root of the solution. Without this alliance, nothing can take place. So, what are the major components of the therapeutic alliance? So, there are major component is that they both are willing. If we have to enter into the relationship, we have to be willing. We should not come together because of the pressure. If the child goes to the therapist because the parents have said, he will not be willing to change. He will not have any resolution for the betterment. So he should be willing himself also for the change. And if you pressurize the client, no, you have to treat that, he will not be into it mentally, okay, 100%. and if the therapist is not 100% involved, then the solution will not come. So this is not any relationship which can be suffered or which can be forced. It is a relationship between two willing individuals. Now, why it is a contractual in nature? Because we are in the contract of coming together for solving the problem. Okay, and we have to understand that it is for the limited duration, it is temporary. When the client problem is solved, this relationship will also be resolved. Okay, it will only be dealing with the problems, and it is trusting, this is confiding. Okay, confidential means that the therapist is bound not to discuss the things with outsiders. Okay, he will not disclose your inner feelings to anyone. So this is confiding, this is trusting relationship, it is for the limited duration. And in this, the therapist encourages um, all this by being empathetic, genuine, and warm to the client. The therapist conveys his words and behaviors that she is not judging the client and will continue to show the same positive feeling towards the client even if the client is rude or confines all the wrong things that she may have done or thought about. This is unconditional positive regard which the therapist has for the client. The therapist has empathy for the client. Now, what do you understand by this? Students, see, if I put the condition that you will get the phone when you get 90%, that means what I am doing? There is some condition. I am having a positive regard for you. Yes, student beta, you are very, very good, but now you will get the phone when you get the 90%. I am putting a condition positive regard, right? But in case of the therapies or therapy, therapist needs to have unconditional positive regard, because if he is judging the person, then the person will not tell about the negative thoughts or the things that he has done. Okay, we are there to change the negative into positive or help the person to change from negative to positive, and it can only take place if there is no condition behind the positive attitude of a therapist. Therapist is completely positive without any condition. Okay, so he is accepting the person as he is. He is not asking for any change. The change will come automatically because he is getting that warm environment. Now, students, one more thing is empathy. The person, the therapist needs to be empathetic. Now, students, it is very clear that empathy is different from sympathy, and intellectual understanding of another person's situation is required. Now, sympathy में क्या होता है? Sympathy is more about pity. It is about, yes, we are having a compassion that the person is having problem. We are not able to keep ourselves in that place. We are just being compassionate. We know that the person is suffering, that is why we are showing the pity or the sympathy. Intellectual understanding is cold in the sense that the person is unable to feel like the other person and does not feel sympathy either. Okay. On the other hand, empathy is present when one is able to understand the plight of the another person and feels like the other person. It what does it mean? It means that we are understanding the things from the other person's point of view. We are putting oneself in other person's shoes. Okay, we are replacing the person with ourselves, and we feel how we will feel in this situation, and whatever the feelings are, they are very true. Then we understand the plight of the other person, and we are genuine towards that person. In sympathy, we are only being compassionate, and in intellectual understanding, we are not even having compassionate. We are only having intellectual understanding. Yes, this has happened, and this is the consequence. we are only understanding it intellectually. But empathy gives us the edge. Empathy helps us to understand the person better. It helps us to understand the outcomes better. Okay, students? So, empathy is very important in any relationship to make it a healing relationship. The therapeutic alliance also requires that the therapist must keep strict confidentiality of the experiences events disclosed by the client. The therapist must not exploit the trust and confidence of the client in any way. Finally, it is a professional relationship and must remain so. The therapist has more of this duty to keep the things professional, because when the person is being dependent on you, he may develop feelings for the therapist. So the therapist has to keep it limited. He has to keep it professional. He has to maintain the trust, and he has to keep the things confidential. Thank you, students. I hope you have understood this part very well. Revise it again and again. Happy learning.